Ever wondered whether the self is a prison or whether the self is something genuine? Because we all have this language, okay, which I won't dive deep for today into why language is black magic, just like the self is, but well, just a tiny bit. Okay, ever since you are born, okay, when you are born, you are simply nothing, okay? You are just a video camera that records everything. You see images, you see, well, everything that is around you and your body can visually perceive, and you hear what the body can acoustically perceive. So what you see is images, what you hear are sounds, but there is no meaning in your head. The meaning is built in time through identification with a language, with a nationality, and all sorts of other concepts. And the worst of those is that of the self, okay? Now what is the self? The self is an identification, okay? You believe that you are someone, okay? Now what is black magic? Well, there are a lot of definitions about it, and some of them may go grim dark, but ultimately what dark magic is, or black magic is, it is nothing else than manipulation, okay? Because manipulation stands at multiple levels. Technically, how I would define it is the use of any action or, purpose or intent to turn someone's energies against them. So, when someone lies to you, you're technically being cheated on, right? You are having some of your energies turned against you. Not specifically and direct, not specifically on the moment, right? But your trust is turned against you, right? And your trust is some energy, right? When you trust in someone, it is a thought, right? It is an algorithm, right? Some person has done some things for you. You have a certain algorithm upon which you decide whether someone is trustworthy or not. This may also be a belief, right? A belief is accepting something without a necessity for proof. So if you are a people pleaser or you are simply naive, right, which means you haven't met enough experience in life, right, that's what naivety is, well, you are going to trust literally everyone, right? When you are cheated upon by several people in a line, you are gonna become more and more realistic, right? That's why things start looking a bit more grim dark, right? Because that's how reality uh, basically is in the realm of ignorance, and we're all, we're all suffering from this acute disease. So the self is an identification, right? Um, just like language, okay? Worse than language, the self is something you identify with, right? And, well, the self is a variable. It's never the same. You like a certain character in a video game, in a movie or something, you identify yourself with it, right? That's how also children play. They see a cartoon, they like the hero or the villain, and then they start embodying it, right? And in their world, it's always, play, play, and play, right? This is a way through which children are using, in a way, manipulation on themselves, right? They are playing with energies, right? They are creating fantasy worlds, right? Because a child, even psychologically, it is admitted that a child has to lie a certain period in life because that's how they get acquainted to certain energies within them, to certain aspects within them. But with parents always punishing them for that, they don't get to use that much. So that leads them more to self-doubt and, of course, well, confusion. And of course, naivety, because they haven't experienced enough things in life to simply grow more confident. So the self is basically nothing else than other people throw upon you, right? You end up in a certain job, you identify with it, so you are a practitioner of that job, right? But the self is kind of a sad prison. Why? Because when you say you're just an engineer, right, you're automatically disallowing yourself from being something else. Because if you're an engineer, what would stop you from also being a painter? Sure, both of them require some time, but if people learn to give up the circus that goes on in their mind, they will simply be more free. They will simply be, much happier, right? Because the more you stop overthinking, the more resources you will have, right? And um, the self is also, as I've been saying, a prison, because the self is kind of a lie, right? All meanings, in a way, are kind of a lie, because when you speak to something, okay, about something, when you call something a table, right, you already limit yourself to that, right? So it's exactly like programming. The reason why I find programming interesting is because it works in the same exact way as the mind, and it also has the same bypass towards life. That's how I call it. Why? Well, when you say a table, right, you do not identify with the table. You're not aware of the table and the fact that it actually exists, right? It is energy and it is vibrating. It actually has a life of its own. But no, when you say table, it's like you're creating an object, okay, in programming, and an object is a collection of data. Now, this data, okay, is called properties, okay, which are the properties of the object, right? The object doesn't have to be something physical, but in many programming languages, you require an object, okay? Now, an object is technically a target or something that you require, right? You need something to pick on, right? Just like in many video games, you can't cast your skills without a target, right? So something that triggers the code requires at least one property of the objects. And similar to programming, your mind is the same, right? I mean, similar and in some cases even the same, because you have a table, right? And that table has its own properties. It has, you know, 3 dimensions, it has the color depth, right? And so many other points, right? And as other properties, right, for you, it also has a certain level of emotional attachment, right? And cognitive attachment, because most likely you will say that the table is yours, right? So you're not acknowledging the table, you're just acknowledging some properties. Now let's move to something which is more lively, right? A tree, for example, or a plant. When you say a tree, right, you already have, you know, what the mind feels or wants it to be like, you know, the mandatory race, right? It belongs to a race, it belongs to a species, right? Maybe even a subspecies, right? Because the mind wants control and it wants to classify everything. But in order to do something through the prism, and unfortunately in some cases prison of the mind, the point is you need an ego, right? For every action you need a certain ego, right? Because technically you are nothing, right? Your thoughts don't belong to you, your emotions don't belong to you, and the meaning also is exterior, right? So you're technically just like a video camera, right? In a video game. That's what the player is in the video game, right? Everything else is just meaning that they have accumulated in reality and they are transposing it in the world of the game, right? So the point about this is when you see a tree, right, you can actually feel it a bit alive. When you call it a tree, you are thinking more at all the properties it has, right? It has a certain height, its leaves are of a certain color depending on race, right? And species, subspecies, whatever other properties, right? So what you are missing is the life within that tree. Similarly, in ignorance, right? Meaning is basically ignorance, right? Similarly, the self is the same, right? Why? Because when you speak about yourself, right, you speak about those properties you have accumulated, who you think you are, what achievements you have come up with, right? But you're ignoring literally everything else, right? So what you're taking into account is basically what other people are drilling into your head. Technically, the self is nothing else than psychological terraforming, right? Because everyone wants people, especially, well, ignorant people, always want others to be at least worse than them. Because if you have an idiot, they will always want more idiot people so that they can easily control them, right? Now, you know, there are those slimy people that, well, in my country, in my language, they're called ass lickers, okay? Those people who don't do anything else than praise you for whatever you're doing. Of course, they're fake, they don't care about you, but, you know, that's how they identify with something, right? This is also, you know, there is also a worse type, right, which is called the covered narcissist, okay? These kinds of people are different from typical narcissists because they don't identify with over exaggerated ego, right? Like the other two types of narcissists do. Covered narcissists will always use others. They will use a company, a group, or something, right? And they will always praise that, right? Because that is technically their self, right? It's a bit of a more aggressive aspect of a herd mentality, right? And they will even die for that, but dying for something at the same time means that you're willing to kill for something. They are perfect synonyms, right? So when you identify with self, right, the self is technically nothing else than a mask, okay? After all, it's called a persona, right? A person, right? The persona is technically a mask that was used in ancient times, by actors to embody different deities, right? Natural events, cataclysms, whatever, right? Because those were, metaphysical aspects which couldn't be easily replicated by people, right? So you needed special costumes and most likely a mask that you put on your face to resemble that deity or, natural phenomenon. So it is only called persona when you can no longer pull the mask off, or technically when you identify yourself with that self that you believe, right? So in occult English you use the expression yourself, right? But the self is nothing fake that you have, is nothing else than something fake you have accumulated. So why are you fighting for something fake? Wouldn't that make you a liar? Now the point is, society, in its twistedness, also comes with personal development, right? Now, development, we know that it means creating something from scratch, right? We also have, for example, game development, right? A creation of the game, right? A video game project, which is started from scratch and, well, there is a finish, right? We have an end product. The same is, we also have web development, right? We create a website or a set of websites, right? And, well, they start from scratch, right? And at the end, they are a finite product. Personal development is also the same. You're technically zero, you're technically nothing, and then you are created a self, okay? And society expects you that you identify with that self, right? Society wants complacent people that are easy to rule, right? And also society will always support the ass lickers, right? Those people who don't do anything for you, but they always seem to praise you for literally everything that you achieve. Why? Well, the point is, they are controlling you through that, right? They are controlling your emotions. And control is nothing else than black magic, right? Because they are using your energies against you. When people praise you for things that you do, even the smallest things, if you have a low self-esteem, you will feel good around that person, right? Around those people. And most likely they know that if they praise you, you will give them attention, right? That's how they control you. They praise you so that you give them attention, and then you're gonna find it very hard to run away from them because you've accepted them in your life, and, well, technically they don't want to leave anymore because they will be losing the attention that you can give, right? So the point is, society, through a self, is technically teaching you how to become complacent, right? Your parents are simply, usually, not always, but your parents are usually way too ignorant, and most likely they are overly identified with the self. How to know this? Well, they believe they are someone on this planet, which is kind of wrong, because, well, if you are someone on this planet, so many people suffer from this disease. They believe that they are some big person on this planet. But a person is the only thing that can be big, because you can inflate your ego as much as you want. It's not going to change who you are. If you use an ego, right, to boast, well, most likely you are fake. Because if you are a great person, you don't need to inflate your ego. You don't need to show it through gloating, right? Because let people say what they think. People always speak the truth. This is one of the greatest things that I have discovered. Sure, they may lie, they may conceal things, but the truth is always in their gestures, and it's always in their words. They might try to conceal things, yes, but that is nothing else than a test, because people always tell the truth, right? We have to understand that when people speak, you have to listen to their voice. You have to see what words they use, what words they repeat, and how they pronounce each and every word, especially if they repeat certain words, because that shows some traumas, right? And people nowadays, it is very shameful to appear as weak, right? That is why one of the greatest aspects of black magic is that you can't cry, right? When you cry, you let out so much negativity from you, but it's been turned into something shameful, right? Because, as I said, black magic is not that thing necessarily that you see in movies, right? Ritualistic usage of energy against a specific person. Well, there is also that, but black magic is also far more potent in simpler aspects, okay? Like when you use shame against your child, that is manipulation. Manipulation also stands for black magic, right? You're using their own energies against them. Why? Well, the ultimate purpose of black magic is control. You want control over other people because you fear them. Everything, every impulse, and every bit and aspect of ignorance comes from a certain fear. You fear that someone might become better than you. You fear that someone might betray you, right? You fear that someone may attack you, right? So you attack first. Or you may fear that, I don't know, someone will leave you, right? All impulses, all unconscious aspects, all aspects of unconsciousness come from a certain fear, right? A survival instinct. So, yes, all this being said, hopefully you like this video. You are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Board signing out.